Hello and welcome to Rauta's Dual Review. This time we have one band from Netherlands called Wesenwille. Now I previously reviewed, for example, the second album A Material God, and this time I'm having two albums, one of them being a reissue and here on Metal Archives listed as compilation. That is the album number one, Wesenwille, but now with live at Roadburn as bonus tracks. So technically speaking, a kind of a double album, or like Metal Archives has listed it, an album as compilation, because it features the original album and then some live tracks. The other album in question here is the third one, The Great Light Above. These are 2022 releases, which came after a few months of one another, and I've decided to include both of them in the same review for rather obvious reasons. First of all, the band's style is rather, well, consistent, and of course because they're both relatively new releases, it makes sense to just put them into one review, a video, instead of making two after one another. And here I am to contemplate how Wesenwille is and how they have progressed. Now, this band started around 10 years ago, 2013, but it took like 5 years before the first album actually got out. And that came out through a different label as opposed to where the band is nowadays, that is on LADLO, a French black metal label. And all these later releases have been coming through LADLO. That includes the second album, this live at Roadburn version of the first one, and this third album. So within 4 years of time, the band has put out actually 4 different releases, excluding the single, which is also right there. Let's start with the, sorry, I'm clicking first. Wrong. Let's start with the first album, Wesenwille and Live at Roadburn. As you can see, this is quite a massive take, having almost 90 minutes of music through 10 tracks. As you can pretty much figure out, the tracks are quite lengthy, which explains the whole length of the release. However, this is interesting because the live tracks are actually very, very nicely produced. I mean, they don't even stand out as worse versions of the songs like so many ways. So often these live albums tend to be. That is, when you're kind of done with the first album's songs, it kind of goes smoothly, and everything here is like, okay, this is very consistent in quality and song-wise, and everything kind of makes a lot of sense. But what is the style of Wesenwille is the question. Now, I could say this is modern black metal, and this is even more so true with the third album, The Great Light Above, which is here for some 45 minutes and 7 tracks. As you can pretty much figure out, this time not all the tracks are not that lengthy. There are a couple of ones which are closer to 10 minutes, but there are also shorter ones like 3 to 4 minutes each, and that makes this a little bit interesting in terms of chains. However, the style of all these albums are somewhat the same, and one could even say so is the quality. And indeed, the style is kind of a combining dissonant black metal riffs to more atmospheric parts. And I would say this has very little to do with the so-called second wave, especially if you're thinking of Nordic style, black metal bands. Doesn't matter whether we're talking about Marduk or Immortal or Satyricon or Imbel Nazarene Berit, you get the idea. Whatever happened in the 90s is not exactly very relevant when it comes to Wesenwille. It's more like modern days black metal done including those dissonant parts and some atmospheric parts, and some could even say post-black metallic parts, because the riffs are not exactly very memorable. They're not catchy, they're not groovy, and indeed the songwriting is, with all these compositions, quite lengthy, and one could even say it has the habit of going to the background. That is, while it's totally, very listenable and to some degree enjoyable, Wesenwille has the habit of more like creating this background music as opposed to making interesting riffs which are just nailing you to the cross. Weird way to put it, but I guess you get what I mean. And this is what separates this from so many second wave black metal bands. Bands that back in the days were just all about creating, stories with punchline riffs and even chorus parts. That is kind of a traditional, approach to metal. Whether we're talking about first wave bands Venom or Bathory or Celtic Frost, the songs and riffs included were kind of a right to the point. And that was so much even with the second wave, as you probably know if you've been going through the decades of black metal. And then there are a lot of, for example, Icelandic bands which are closer to what Wesenwille here is doing, and that is creating these more like layers instead of riffs when it comes to the music. Now this goes very much hand in hand given the lyrical description here. I haven't read the lyrics, mind you. I have only been listening to these past two albums, digital format only, because I was traveling and I don't have the physical copies here in Spain anyway. But here it says industrialization, capitalism and modernity are the topics of Wesenwille lyrics. Now, if that is true, assuming it is, why not? It starts to make a lot of sense, because Wesenwille is not about just doing retro kind of black metal. Let's go back to 1992, before Burzum killed Mayhem and all that stuff. It's more like, let's make this modern version of what black metal could be. And that explains a lot of these things. The different angle, the different approach creating this kind of music. It's not for everybody. That's kind of a given. So if you're clinging to the past, or if you're more like riff-driven music listener, much like I am, this might leave you a little bit cold. And by this I mean, I do like some parts what Wesenwille is doing. There are lots of interesting ideas, but the execution lacks a little bit magic. That is, while these albums are kind of easy to listen, they indeed have this habit of going to the background, because the riffs and chorus parts are kind of non-existent in the terms of like, let's make something memorable, let's make something outstanding, something that is truly there to just like, wow, did you hear that riff? It's more about, let's make the kind of a sonic patterns, dissonant or not, and that's when the magic happens, or doesn't, like it seems to be my case with the band. So all of these albums, all these three albums are very listenable, also to some degree a little bit forgettable. Like when I play them, I feel kind of comfortable. I feel like, yeah, these are not that bad. But once it's over and I'm thinking like 1 or 2 days later, what got stuck? I don't remember a single riff, single chorus part, or single element that would be like, this is why Wesenwille is so good. So, like I said, it's a tough cookie to crack. On the other hand, enjoyable, but on the other hand also very, very forgettable. This is what Wesenwille is all about, and I'm sure a lot of people like this kind of stuff, but those who are more riff-driven or more memorable, groovier riffs attached might not like this. So decide for yourself. For me, they are decent albums, but still far from being exactly great. Links are provided in the description box, so I hope you will give them a chance and decide for yourself. Thanks for your time with the review. See you soon. Bye bye.